What we said months ago is that he's incapable of fixing everything. He was going to try. We don't know how much he was going to get done. Somewhere in the future, America is going to come to the realization that they're going to have to fix this themselves.
Are you familiar with furries, Mark?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so
100%. A day before it came out, I'm like on Twitter, I'm like guaranteed 100% this guy's a yiffer. And don't Google
hold on,
that.
before you go on, I never knew what it was. My aunt's a school teacher, and she told me about it. She had a furry in her class, and I laughed, and she explained this to me. So if you're out there and you don't know what a furry is, don't feel bad, because I didn't know what it was up until like a year ago. This will teach.
I still don't think you appreciate or know, John. It's worse than
well,
you
no,
think.
that's why I want to get it from you. But over G Wi-Fi on Rumble, this will teach Jimmy Kimmel to not be so affectionate to the furries. So I want to pull up an article that I found on the furries, Mark, and it's from good old BBC. Being a furry is like wearing a superhero cape. Can you explain to the audience, Mark, and me, what a furry is?
Well, I guess it's a special type of human being that lacked some type of formative experience, and I don't know what they're trying to compensate for. But it's not that little kid in class who thinks he's like a puppy, and so the teacher has to put a bowl of water on the floor, and everybody rolls their eyes and tolerates it. No, these people dress up like the picture shows in these costumes, and then they go to massive like conferences. They have like furry where they rub up against each other and make sounds, and I really don't understand it. But this is apparently one of the many diverse things that Redditors fill their time with. And so all I can say is keep your kids off Reddit, or they will turn into this. And this is apparently what the roommate of the individual who is alleged to have assassinated Charlie Kirk is up to in his spare time, when his parents were paying for his condo and he was employed part-time playing video games most of the additional time, I would suspect, and probably transitioning on taxpayer dollar is also my guess. Man, I'll tell you what Trump should do is he should boot all of the transsexuals getting taxpayer-funded hormone replacement therapy for transitions off of Medicare.
I thought he did that already. I thought he already did.
I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is the whole reason, like, the transgender people were joining the military. There's tens and tens of thousands of those puppies. I think Grok said it was between 8,000 and 15,000 transgender members of the military before Trump had a crackdown. Well, why do you think, John? That's an easy way to get taxpayer-funded bottom surgeries.
Yeah, that's very true. Except you got to give up 4 years of life. I got to ask you: Is this a furry too? I see.
No, this is a different, more perverse thing, and I don't know what this is called, but they get together in troops. I think that this is more like sadomasochism adjacent. I really don't know. Again, Twitter or Reddit is a very, 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 very deep rabbit hole of perversion. But yeah, I mean, this is different, and it's also gross.
I mean, how do we get rid of this shit? It's hard to believe that we've got such retardism going through our communities where people think they're going to dress up in costumes, and all of a sudden they're going to be cats and dogs or birds or rats or. I mean, it's hard to believe that. I don't even know what to say, that we've gone this far down a, no pun intended, a rabbit hole.
The fourth turning will fix this for us, and it's coming very soon.
How soon?
These people will not be tolerated. I think in the next 5 years is my guess. And I think we're starting. Listen, this number on political violence and the 27-point shift towards the death penalty just because of Irina Zurutska. I think those two things alone tell us that Americans are going to start self-ordering themselves. And we knew this was coming. We talked about this long ago. We said that, well, Trump won in the mandate as a mandate because people wanted his agenda. They wanted a government they could trust. They wanted him to fix everything. What we said months ago is that he's incapable of fixing everything. He was going to try. We don't know how much he was going to get done. Somewhere in the future, America is going to come to the realization that they're going to have to fix this themselves. And I don't know if this gets us here, but it gets us a lot closer. And when America decides that it needs to fix it themselves, they will not tolerate this kind of behavior. In fact, most of the people doing this behavior will find that they're unable to tolerate it themselves.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, do you think we open back up mental institutions in this country, or tell parents to slap their kids aside the head and say, listen, you're not a dog, you're a human being? How do you fix this issue when the parents sit there and think it's okay for their kids to be pets. Like, you know what? Everything starts at home. How do you pull yourself out of this when the parents can't even acknowledge there's something wrong? And when they do acknowledge something's wrong, they think it's okay and they allow it to go on. It's how you have instances like Tyler Robinson shooting Charlie Kirk.
So I don't know how it's going to play out. And I think it could go many, many, many different ways. Well, let's just play this out to its logical conclusion. Let's say that there's a major recession with an economic hard landing. Okay. Youth unemployment shoots up from 17% to 25%. People are rioting in the streets. There's a lot of people who can't find work, a lot of anger and frustration, maybe towards Trump, maybe not, maybe towards the establishment. But who's going to riot and who's going to go on the streets? Well, I don't know if it's going to be the right or the left. And what does the right do? Maybe the right goes rampant on these college campuses. Maybe it beats up people like this. Maybe people are afraid to do this kind of thing and put it on the internet. Or maybe the left goes nuts and just starts shooting stuff up. And then there's a violent blowback. I don't know. That's one way. Another way could be the friction like we've talked about between the federal and the state governments. Maybe Trump sends the National Guard to Chicago, and maybe Pritzker decides he doesn't want that to happen. And so the onus is on Pritzker to determine how secessionist he wants to get. What if Trump tries to roll up Murphy? Like, these things might happen. Or if you remember 9/11, if you remember that Americans weren't too happy with each other, they had the hanging Chad fiasco, and America hung in the balance as an election was decided by like a couple hundred of fake votes. And then George W. Bush had like a 90% approval rating within less than a year. And why did that happen? Well, 9/11. And so the fourth turning tells us that society will get to a place, for whatever reason, where it has the resolve to do something like have every male in the country line up to volunteer to storm the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah.
So in that society, I can tell you that there will not be a lot of tolerance. There will not be a place for perverted religions, for occultists, for degeneracy. There will be no time, money, or effort or intent to just dabble in all of these individualistic things.
How fast do you expect this to happen, Mark? Can you just explain for the audience in layman's terms what the fourth turning is for those who aren't familiar with it?
Yep. Most of recorded human history, it was just agrarian cultures. You were born, you farmed, you lived in a village, you had summer, winter, spring, fall over and over and over again. You harvested your crop, you had your kids, and you died.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a cyclical time. And there wasn't a lot of interest in news. They didn't care. Then we got this linear history where news changes. The world's progressive. Everything changes every day.
Yeah.
And that does something very different. It's like, well, people experience different things. It's formative for them. And so there were individuals that grew up in the Great Depression. There's individuals that grew up right after World War II. And those two generations had very, very, very different experiences. Yeah. So now, because of that, the Western world tends to operate in cycles where roughly every 80 to 100 years, you go through a repetition where the generations tend to fall the same way. And it's because there's a major crisis. And so our last major crisis was World War II. Before that, it was a civil war. Before that was a revolution. Before that, there was probably some crap with the French and the Indian or whatever, right? And it goes back all the way to the 1500s. And so it's basically this idea that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, men create bad times, whatever. You've heard that. Everybody's heard that. We're due for the crisis. We had our hard times. It was World War II. It made strong men and they made good times. That was the 40s to the 60s. Then what happens is social cohesion. Everybody's happy. The institutions are strong. And things get so good that people are like, I'm into my own thing. I'm going to go do drugs and be a hippie. And so the values get undermined and people become more individualistic. And eventually you get to a point where there's no demand for order. So order decreases. And then all of a sudden order decreasing is really bad. So everybody's like, we need more order. That's where we are right now. And that is the end. The fourth turning, the one that is punctuated by a period called the ekpyrosis, where everything comes crashing down. It could be war, it could be famine, it could be a revolution, it could be many, many, many things. It could just be an economic situation, but it's going to be so bad that it makes people want to crave social cohesion again. We are going to want to coexist with these people that put those freaky leather dog masks on. And so how and why is a good question. I don't know.
The 80 to 100 year window puts us at I guess you had the Great Depression in 1929, 1930. So you put, it puts you 3 years away on that spectrum. You look at World War II, 1945, it puts you, somewhere inside the 80-year window. I mean, there's so much happened in between that 80 to 100-year window between the Great Depression and World War
Yeah.
II.
25 to 45 was the last fourth turning.
Yeah.
And so you do the clock, it's like 2025 is the 80-year window, but it's really not 100. Like there was only one of that. Again, it's loosey goosey. But
You know
the
the problem
idea
is,
is
Mark,
that
the economic aspect of it, I feel like Donald Trump's got this grip on the economy where every time something looks like it's going to happen, Donald Trump throws a life raft out there and saves it. I mean, a few months ago, it looked like the world was about to collapse. Interest rates were through the roof. Some people paying 12%, 13%, 15% on a house mortgage. You hadn't seen that since, I guess, the 80s. Times were looking rough. The price of inflation was going up. The rate of inflation was going up. Price of things were through the roof. And somehow Donald Trump managed to get this thing down. Today, we've got a 1/4 point rate cut. So it looks like every time there's about to be some maybe kind of a recession, Donald Trump pulls us out of it, which scares me a little bit more because the fourth turning could be something far worse than just an economic collapse.
Yeah, I don't want to be a doomer, but I am not an optimistic person, and I think there's reasons to be pessimistic. I think historically speaking, housing cost is way too high by orders of magnitude, and also we're after a period of very high food inflation, and so people are really struggling. I think that people have been relying on debt increasingly. And I think that for this stuff to correct, there needs to be a housing market correction. I don't know if it'll be caused by deportations. I don't know if it'll be caused by rush to the theater exit because somebody yells fire. I don't know. But that has to change. There has to be a housing price correction, or we're going to literally have an uprising, because housing prices was the number one issue that the young people complain about. Yeah. And they have to pay for Social Security and Medicare for all of these boomers. That's the problem. Is that we have not funded that liability. We have not created a generation of economically viable people who are going to further the US dollar to its continued hegemony on the world stage. And so, like, how do we get there without a lot of people taking a major loss on their second properties and it causing a consumer crunch or layoffs? We haven't had one of those in a long time, and the American consumer is stretched. So I've heard stories about rolling layoffs in the Fortune 500. I don't know how true that stuff is, but you can't believe the BLS.
Those things are so those things are so over bloated to begin with. They can cut half the labor force in some of those Fortune 500 companies, and you wouldn't even know those bottom feeders are gone. It's just, I don't know. The reason I bring that up, Mark, is because it scares me a little bit today. We see some unraveling happening in Moldova. I mean, the whole European Union seems like it's in shambles. You've got other countries who are going through economic issues, which just leads to the next world war. I mean, the situation is like perfectly aligned for it right now.
I didn't even see the Moldova thing. I mean, we were watching Nepal, and it's exactly the path which could happen here, which is the young people are so fed up with the corruption in the government and the nepotism and its inability to do things, and then it cracks down, tries to censor things, and then the young people, okay, like fast forward, they're burning parliament and killing the wife of the prime minister.
Yeah.
And then you look at England. I think probably one of the best things for us is if England pops off early, because it might stiffen everybody's upper lip, try and figure out what the path forward looks like for us. But one of the things not a lot of people saw, I wonder if I could pull it up real quick, is that the head of NATO, this guy just came out not that long ago. I can't find it.
Numbskull.
There's an article of Zero Hedge, it's less than 10 days old. The head of NATO came out and said that they were informing France that they needed to increase their hospital bed capacity from 10,000 to 50,000, between 10 and 50,000 additional beds in order to care for wounded troops within the next 6 months due to a potential two-front war between China and Russia.
Wow.
So that's what our taxpayer dollar is doing. It's funding NATO expansionism, World War III or bust. And my backhanded remark was, isn't it weird that after 40 or 50 years of well-constructed global Marxist laid plans to control the world, the second their narratives collapse, oh, now we're at the brink of World War III.